It didn't explode. It didn't announce itself. It slipped in quietly, almost invisibly, the moment everything started falling apart. If you were standing there, you might not have noticed it at all. A change in the air. A pause that lingered a second too long. Two people who once shared everything suddenly looking at each other like strangers, separated by something fragile and already breaking. There was no shouting. No slammed doors. No dramatic scene anyone could point to later and say, "That's when it ended." It was smaller than that. More dangerous than that. The kind of silence that tells you the damage is already done. After that moment, she wasn't the same. Most people wouldn't have caught it, but it lived in the way her eyes moved, in how her voice softened and then pulled back, in how she slowly stopped offering pieces of herself that had once been given without hesitation. And through every crack, every disappointment, every unspoken word that settled between them like dust, she still cared. Too much. Even when caring started to feel like choosing pain over peace. But caring doesn't stop destruction. It just makes you feel every fracture more deeply. So when people asked how it felt to see Robyn again after everything, the years of tension, the quiet blame, the emotional fallout that never truly healed, they expected anger. They expected bitterness, maybe even an outburst. What they didn't expect was the truth. There was no explosion, no tears, no dramatic ending. The last interaction ended in something far stranger, something unsettling. They were supposed to be talking about land, about property, about logistics. But it was never really about land. It was about decisions made without consent. Conversations held in shadows. Outcomes presented as unavoidable. And in the middle of that uneasy exchange, something unspoken passed between them. A realization. We're not on the same side. Maybe we never were. While fans replayed that moment, dissecting every pause and glance, something far bigger was already moving quietly behind the scenes. Something no one was watching. Something that would change the story in a way no argument or interview ever could. Because while everyone else was focused on drama, Meri Brown was preparing a response no one saw coming. A response so calm, so deliberate, that when it finally surfaced, it felt like a storm rolling in under a clear sky. And that's where this story truly begins. Not with a fight. Not with a breakdown. But with a man sitting under studio lights, convinced he was about to fix his image. Kody believed this interview would save him. You could see it in the way he carried himself, in the practiced softness of his voice, in how often he looked straight into the camera as if begging it to understand him. He wanted redemption. He wanted to repaint the past, soften the edges, make himself the misunderstood hero of a story he had shattered. And for a moment, it almost worked. His sadness sounded rehearsed. His vulnerability carefully timed. He spoke like a man who wanted sympathy, who wanted forgiveness without accountability. Then Meri's name came up. Everything changed. Something sharp flashed behind his eyes. Not grief. Not regret. Defensiveness. Years of it. He didn't pause. He didn't choose his words carefully. He blamed her. Said she was distant. Cold. Disconnected. That she didn't try. He dragged the old catfishing scandal back into the light, using it like proof that she had abandoned the marriage long before he did. And then he said it. The sentence that stopped people cold. He said he regretted wasting decades trying to fix something that was already broken. He called his marriage to Meri a waste of time. The internet held its breath. Because everyone expected Meri to respond. The Meri they knew, the one who held on, who apologized for things she didn't do, who tried to explain herself, who still believed love could fix what neglect destroyed. They expected posts, tears, words. Instead, they got silence. Not empty silence. Strategic silence. No statements. No interviews. No emotional reactions. Nothing. And that silence cut deeper than any argument ever could. Because while Kody talked, Meri moved. While he tried to rewrite history, she was rewriting her life. And no one realized yet that her quiet wasn't absence. It was preparation. 3 days later, Meri reappeared. Not angry. Not heartbroken. In Hawaii. Not on a pity trip. Not hiding. She was attending a high-level business retreat celebrating top earners. Top earners. The irony was brutal. For years, she had been painted as fragile, unstable, lost. And there she was, barefoot on white sand, surrounded by powerful women, glowing with a freedom she hadn't worn in years. Luxury boats, private dinners, peace written all over her face. She wasn't escaping. She was arriving. That silence after the interview? It wasn't weakness. It was a seismic shift. A calm so controlled it rattled everything Kody thought he still owned. Because she didn't give him a fight. She gave him irrelevance. Her first post was simple. A beach. Soft light. A breeze in her hair. But it wasn't a vacation photo. It was a message. She was surrounded by people who valued her. People who didn't ask her to shrink. People who saw her worth without conditions. And once that image hit, Kody's narrative collapsed. Fans didn't see a woman he wasted time on. They saw someone who finally understood her life was bigger than a man who walked away emotionally long before she ever left. She didn't say his name. Not once. And that was the sharpest move of all. Because Kody thrives on reaction. He feeds on chaos. Silence starved him. And then came the moment no one expected. A quiet weekday morning. A simple notification. Fans assumed another photo. Instead, they got an announcement that detonated the fandom. Meri revealed the full-scale expansion of her Utah bed and breakfast. Not a refresh. Not a tweak. An expansion. New land. New rooms. A complete reinvention. Rustic elegance fused with modern luxury. This wasn't a business update. It was a declaration. The timing was devastating. Days after being dismissed publicly, she delivered success so loud it drowned out every insult. The comments exploded. This is how you clap back. She didn't need words. This is justice. But this wasn't built overnight. This came from pain. From years of feeling invisible. From realizing the man she loved was never truly present. She had to lose the life she thought she wanted to build the one she deserved. And while fans celebrated, Kody watched. Uncomfortable. Because in his version of the world, Meri was supposed to fade. She wasn't supposed to thrive without him. Her independence shattered the story he needed to believe about himself. And the worst part? People believed her story without her ever telling it. But this wasn't even the full transformation. The business was only the surface. The real change happened inside her. Her posture shifted. Her smile deepened. She stopped apologizing for existing. Stopped shrinking for peace. Stopped pretending the past mattered more than the future she was creating. She didn't rise to hurt him. She didn't rise to prove anything. She rose because she finally understood the truth. She never needed him. Not his approval. Not his validation. Not his presence. And once she saw herself clearly, there was no going back. Her glow wasn't happiness. It was liberation. Her silence wasn't avoidance. It was closure. And what Kody felt wasn't anger. It was something worse. Irrelevance. It didn't announce itself with noise. No warning. No explosion. Just a quiet fracture that slipped into the room the moment everything began to break. If someone had been standing nearby, they probably wouldn't have noticed it at all. A pause that lasted too long. A look that didn't soften. Two people who once moved like one suddenly standing on opposite sides of something already collapsing. There was no argument to point back to later. No dramatic scene to replay. It was subtle, restrained, and far more dangerous than shouting. The kind of stillness that signals the end long before anyone admits it out loud. After that day, something inside her shifted. Not in ways most people could easily see, but in the details that matter. The way her eyes stopped searching. The way her voice grew guarded. The way she slowly began reclaiming pieces of herself she had spent years giving away without question. She didn't announce the change. She carried it quietly. And even as disappointment stacked on disappointment, even as silence replaced conversations, she still cared. Deeply. Recklessly. Long after caring started to hurt more than it healed. And caring didn't save anything. It never does. It only sharpens the pain when things finally fall apart. So when the question came up about seeing Robyn again after all those years of tension, after the unspoken resentment and emotional debris that never truly settled, People expected a reaction. Anger, frustration, maybe even bitterness. What they didn't expect was how unsettlingly calm the truth was. The final interaction wasn't loud or emotional. It ended in something far more uncomfortable. They were meant to be discussing land, logistics, practical matters. But the conversation was never really about property. It was about control. About decisions made behind closed doors. About outcomes delivered like commands instead of conversations. And somewhere in the middle of that uneasy exchange, a realization passed silently between them. Whatever alliance once existed was gone. Maybe it never truly existed at all. While viewers replayed those moments, studying every awkward pause and forced smile, something much larger was already unfolding away from the cameras. Something deliberate. Something invisible. While everyone focused on surface-level drama, a completely different response was being prepared. One that didn't rely on confrontation or explanations. One that would reshape the story without saying a single word. Because while the noise continued outside, Meri Brown was choosing a different path. And it didn't begin with a breakdown. It didn't begin with a public statement. It began with a man under studio lights, convinced he was about to regain control of the narrative. He walked into that interview believing it was his moment to reset everything. You could see the confidence stitched into his posture, the careful calm in his voice, the way he kept glancing toward the camera as if it were a mirror that could finally reflect him the way he wanted to be seen. This was supposed to be his correction, his chance to soften the past, to frame himself as the man who tried, who cared, who carried the weight while everyone else walked away. For a few minutes, the performance worked. The sadness sounded convincing. The vulnerability felt measured, intentional. He spoke like someone who wanted sympathy without consequences. Then her name entered the conversation. The shift was instant. His tone tightened. His expression hardened. Whatever mask he had been wearing slipped just enough to reveal something sharper underneath. He didn't slow down. He didn't choose his words carefully. He redirected blame. He painted her as distant, unresponsive, emotionally unavailable. He reached back into old wounds, dragging familiar accusations forward, presenting them as evidence that she had checked out long before he ever did. The story was polished, rehearsed, and painfully familiar. And then he crossed a line he couldn't step back from. He said the years he spent trying were wasted. That the relationship had been broken beyond repair long before it ended. That the time, the effort, the commitment meant nothing in the end. Decades reduced to regret. A life dismissed with a sentence. The reaction was immediate. Viewers froze. Comment sections erupted. Everyone waited for her to respond. Because the woman they remembered would have. She would have explained. She would have defended herself. She would have tried to correct the record, soften the blow, salvage dignity from someone else's words. But that woman never appeared. There was no post, no interview, no emotional reaction for anyone to dissect. Just silence. Not the empty kind. The intentional kind. The kind that doesn't ask to be understood. While he was busy reshaping the past, she was doing something far more dangerous. She was stepping out of it. And no one realized yet that her silence wasn't surrender. It was timing. That silence didn't fade. It expanded. Hours passed, then days, and still nothing from her. No clarification. No rebuttal. No carefully worded message meant to soothe the audience or defend her heart. And the absence began to speak louder than anything she could have said. Because while he continued talking, analyzing, explaining himself through interviews and secondhand quotes, she was nowhere in the noise. She wasn't reacting. She wasn't chasing the narrative. She was letting it collapse under its own weight. Then, without warning, she reappeared. Not in anger. Not in sadness. In sunlight. Her return didn't come with a statement or an explanation. It came through images that felt almost unreal in contrast to the tension still hanging in the air. White sand. Open water. A calm smile that didn't look forced or fragile. She was in Hawaii, but not in hiding. Not escaping. She was standing confidently among people who looked at her with respect, celebrating achievement, success, forward motion. A professional gathering. A place earned, not gifted. And suddenly the silence made sense. This wasn't a distraction. It was evidence. For years, she had been framed as unstable, dependent, emotionally stuck. But the woman stepping into that space carried herself like someone who had already let go of what no longer fit. Every image reflected ease. Not the kind you pretend to have, but the kind that comes after making peace with a difficult truth. She wasn't rebuilding. She had already rebuilt. And still, she said nothing. No captions aimed at him. No subtle digs. No cryptic quotes. Just presence. And that presence unraveled the story he had just tried to sell. Because people didn't see someone broken by rejection. They saw someone grounded. Someone surrounded by affirmation instead of tension. Someone whose life clearly extended far beyond the man who claimed she had wasted his time. That was the moment the balance shifted. Because silence, paired with visible growth, becomes undeniable. It doesn't argue. It doesn't plead. It simply exists. And as those images spread, the narrative he depended on began to fracture. Not because she contradicted him, but because she didn't need to. And somewhere behind the scenes, something else was already moving. Something much bigger than a trip. Something that would turn quiet composure into undeniable momentum.